Did you know that the enemy may be using the very worship in your church to divert you from God? It sounds absurd, but it's real. And it's happening right now, right under your nose. Stay with me and discover how this spiritual trap can be deceiving even the most faithful. Have you ever stopped to think about how negative forces can infiltrate religious practices, especially worship? It may seem like an absurd idea, but believe me, this is a reality that many ignore. Worship, one of the purest forms of spiritual connection, can sometimes be corrupted in ways so subtle that even the most ardent worshipers fail to notice. In today's video, we will explore one of the adversary's most deceptive strategies to divert worship that should be exclusively focused on God. Over the next few minutes, we will discover how this infiltration happens and what are the signs that many do not notice. What you are about to learn could completely transform your view of what is happening in many services. If this content is already useful to you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to receive more reflections like this. Worship and praise are powerful. There is no doubt about that. The Bible is clear in several passages about the spiritual impact of praise. In Acts 16 verses 25 to 26, for example, we see Paul and Silas praising God while they were in prison, and as a result, a great earthquake occurred that opened the prison doors and freed all the prisoners. This demonstrates the deep spiritual power that praise can carry. But just as God uses praise to perform miracles, the adversary also tries to subvert this practice, using it for his own ends. The enemy is cunning. He understands that praise is a direct link with the Creator, and therefore tries to divert this sacred act to another purpose. Imagine worship being corrupted, its original purpose obscured, turning into a superficial display with no genuine spiritual purpose. And if you want to continue learning more about how to protect your faith and worship, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. This happens when praise stops being an act of surrender to God and becomes a performance, where the focus shifts from divine exaltation to the skill of the musicians, the quality of the production, or even the entertainment. In 2 Corinthians 11 verse 14, Paul warns us that Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. This means that the enemy can infiltrate seemingly sacred practices, such as worship, and divert the glory that should be given to God alone. One way the adversary does this is by turning worship into a spectacle. When the focus shifts from God to the performance, to the skill of the musicians, or to the sophistication of the production, the true purpose of worship is lost. True worship should be about exalting God, recognizing His holiness, and surrendering completely to Him. When this is replaced by the desire to impress others, worship becomes empty and superficial. To understand this infiltration, it is useful to go back to the beginning. Lucifer, before his fall, was one of the main angels responsible for music in heaven. In Ezekiel 28 verses 13 to 15, he is described as being an Eden, adorned with precious stones and with instruments prepared for him on the day he was created. This passage suggests that Lucifer had a special role in the celestial hierarchy, directly linked to praise and worship. He was a cherub, meaning he had a level of closeness to God that few other angels possessed. However, his fall was caused by pride and the desire to receive the worship that belonged to God. In Isaiah 14 verses 12 to 14, we see Lucifer's arrogance expressed in his ambition to rise above the stars of God and be like the Most High. This insatiable desire for self-exaltation led to his rebellion against God. Lucifer didn't just want to lead worship, he wanted to be the object of worship. This inordinate pride resulted in his expulsion from heaven. After his expulsion, Lucifer, now known as Satan, continues to seek ways to steal the worship that belongs to God. Without his original role, Satan uses his ancient knowledge of music and worship to divert the worship of the faithful. He knows the power of genuine praise and tries to pervert this practice for his own purposes. If you are already feeling the importance of paying attention to these strategies and want to strengthen your spiritual journey, take this moment to subscribe to the channel. This will ensure you receive more uplifting content like this. Satan attempts to infiltrate worship practices in many churches, diverting the focus from God to other things, such as the talent of the musicians or the spectacle of the performance. This attempt to divert worship is not only to satisfy your desire to be exalted, but also to prevent God from receiving the glory that is his due. He uses his deep knowledge of human nature and worship to create distractions and distortions, making worship mechanical and devoid of its true spiritual purpose. Unfortunately, many worship leaders and musicians can unknowingly fall into these traps. This happens when the focus of worship shifts away from God and becomes about performance or entertainment. In John 4 verses 23 to 24, Jesus emphasizes that true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. When worship becomes spectacle, the essence of true praise is lost, and the spiritual environment becomes susceptible to evil influence. One of the most visible signs of this distortion is the way in which many services have turned into entertainment events. Churches invest large sums of money in sophisticated sound and lighting equipment, and productions begin to resemble music shows rather than moments of worship. While technical excellence is not negative in and of itself, the problem arises when these elements overshadow the true purpose of worship, to glorify God. Another aspect to consider is the content of worship songs. Lyrics, which should be theologically profound and rich in spiritual meaning, often become superficial and focused on human emotions. Worship, which should exalt God's holiness and his sovereignty, begins to emphasize the worshiper's personal experiences and feelings. This not only takes the focus away from God, but it also creates a misunderstanding of who he is. The search for popularity and acceptance also contributes to this distortion. Worship songs are often created with the goal of pleasing a broad audience, which can lead to theological compromises. The pressure to produce music that becomes popular on social media can result in prioritizing catchy melodies and emotionally resonant lyrics that lack biblical depth. If you want to explore more about how to strengthen your faith and avoid spiritual commitments, subscribe to the channel right now. Another problem is the glorification of worship leaders and musicians. When the congregation begins to idolize those on stage, placing them on pedestals, the purpose of worship is again distorted. Instead of pointing to God, worship begins to revolve around human personalities. This subtle idolatry can lead to personality worship, where the presence of God becomes secondary to the presence of Christian celebrities. Technology and social media also play a significant role in this distortion. Live streams and worship videos can easily turn into showcases for in-person showings. While technology has the potential to reach and impact people around the world, it can also foster a culture of performance and vanity. The temptation to chase likes, shares, and followers can further distract from true worship. If you are enjoying this content and want to continue reflecting on the challenges of true worship, subscribe to the channel. We have more videos like this that will strengthen your walk of faith. Another crucial point is the importance of theology in the lyrics of worship songs. Song lyrics need to be aligned with biblical truth. In Colossians 3 verse 16, we are instructed to let the word of Christ dwell in us richly as we teach and admonish one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. If song lyrics do not reflect biblical truth, they can become a tool in the hands of the enemy to lead astray hearts. True worship must be rooted in the Word of God. When lyrics are superficial or contain doctrinal errors, they not only fail to adequately glorify God, but can also lead worshipers to misunderstand the Christian faith. If this type of content has been useful to you, be sure to subscribe to the channel and share this video with your friends so they can also grow spiritually. Worship leaders have an enormous responsibility. They are not just talented musicians, they are, above all, ministers of the gospel. His role goes beyond leading songs. They have the responsibility to guide the congregation in authentic, God-centered worship. This requires a deep theological understanding and a life of constant prayer. Worship leaders also have a responsibility to disciple their team. This means training musicians and singers not only in technical skills, but also in theological and spiritual foundations. They should foster an environment of spiritual growth where each member of the worship team is encouraged to develop a personal relationship with God. True leadership in worship is characterized by a spirit of service, where the main goal is to facilitate the congregation's connection with God. Spiritual preparation is as important as musical preparation. Worship leaders must dedicate time to prayer and Bible study, always seeking the presence of God. And remember, if you want to continue receiving content that deepens these teachings, subscribe to the channel right now. By subscribing, you will be notified whenever a new video is published, so you can continue to grow on your spiritual journey. These biblical examples teach us that true worship is an expression of faith and trust in God. When we worship God in spirit and truth, we attract His presence and release His power into our lives and circumstances. True worship does not depend on material resources, but on sincere hearts before God. We have reached the end of another video. If you seek inspiration, knowledge, and a deeper spiritual connection, don't miss this opportunity to subscribe to the channel. Leave a like, comment on your reflections, and share with your friends so that our community continues to grow and strengthen its faith. If you would like to support us in continuing to produce this content, please consider becoming a member of the channel. Together, we can make a difference and strengthen our spiritual journey. God bless you, and see you in the next video.